Let's start with the truth that most men aren't ready to face. Many believe they understand what cuts deepest for a woman: betrayal, dishonesty, or being ignored. But that's not where the real pain lies. When a woman stops valuing you, what truly shakes her isn't your anger or your silence. It's when she realizes you no longer need her validation to feel whole. That's the moment the power dynamic shifts, and it's the one thing her pride can't handle. Society teaches men to think love is about giving endlessly: attention, money, effort, loyalty, and that by doing so, they'll be rewarded with respect. But if that were true, why do so many good men end up discarded like they never mattered? Why do the men who gave everything end up forgotten, while someone else easily replaces them? The answer is simple but brutal. People don't value what comes too easily. When a woman senses that your world revolves around her, she subconsciously assumes she's above you. And when she no longer respects you, your greatest weapon isn't confrontation, it's indifference. When your life moves forward without her influence, when your happiness doesn't revolve around her presence, it hits her in a place no argument ever could. Because what she never expected was to become irrelevant in the life of a man who once made her feel powerful. This isn't about manipulation or revenge, it's about reclaiming your worth. When you stop chasing her approval and start walking with quiet confidence, you show her something she can't unsee: that you were never beneath her, she just stopped deserving you. Here's what most men fail to grasp: relationships aren't built on only emotions. They're built on dynamics. Emotions fade, but dynamics decide who leads and who follows. When she senses you're no longer under her emotional control, she loses her leverage. And if she never truly valued you to begin with, that loss burns twice as hard, because the illusion of power she had over you suddenly vanishes. Think of it this way: when a woman begins to pull away, when she becomes distant, cold, or dismissive, most men panic. They start chasing harder, sending longer messages, explaining themselves, begging for another chance. They believe persistence equals love. But every time you do that, you teach her that your self-worth is dependent on her attention. You confirm that she can disrespect you without consequences. And when she realizes you'll keep showing up no matter how she treats you, she stops respecting you entirely. Now, the thing that truly unsettles her isn't your anger or your tears. It's when you do none of that. When you quietly remove yourself from her emotional orbit and redirect that energy into your life, your growth, your peace. When you stop trying to prove yourself and start improving yourself. That's when she starts to feel it: the emptiness where your validation used to live. Suddenly, she's no longer the center of your attention, and that void becomes her mirror. See, every human being craves significance. When someone who used to prioritize us suddenly doesn't, it shakes our identity. And for a woman who took your devotion for granted, that realization hurts more than anything you could say. It forces her to confront a truth she never wanted to see. She was never the prize, you were. But this isn't about punishing her. It's about rising above the cycle of seeking validation. When you stop trying to earn her respect and start demanding it through your actions, something powerful happens. Your silence becomes louder than any speech. She'll feel the shift even if you say nothing. That's why silence is so effective. It's not passive, it's strategic. It tells her, I'm not going to fight for a place in someone's life who can't see my value. Words can be ignored, arguments can be twisted, but silence forces reflection. When you stop explaining, she has to face her own behavior. When she can no longer provoke a reaction, she starts to question herself. Why isn't he chasing me anymore? Why doesn't he care? Who has his attention now? Those questions keep her awake at night, because silence doesn't just withhold words, it withholds validation, and that's what she craves most. Strong men understand that silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's refusing to spend energy on someone who no longer deserves it. Every time you argue to prove your worth, you give her control over your emotions. But when you hold your frame, when you stay composed and unbothered, you reclaim that power. And that calm, that self-assured stillness will say more about you than any speech ever could. Let's face it, being constantly available destroys respect. When you're always there, always reachable, always bending your schedule to fit hers, you send a message that you have nothing more valuable going on. She might not say it, but she feels it, and slowly she loses interest. Why? Because the thrill of earning your time disappears when it's freely given. Availability without boundaries turns affection into obligation. Women don't admire men who beg for attention. They're drawn to men who have direction, purpose, and limits. When you're focused on your goals, your health, and your mission, you naturally become less available. And that's when your value rises, because what's rare becomes desirable. What's abundant becomes disposable. It's a universal truth that applies to everything: time, money, relationships. Picture this. A man who answers every text immediately, drops his plans whenever she calls, never says no. At first, she enjoys the attention, but over time, she stops wondering where he is. She stops feeling the spark of anticipation. His consistency turns into predictability, and predictability kills attraction. Soon, she's emotionally checked out, not because he's unkind, but because he's too easy to have. Now flip the story. Imagine that same man, but this time, he changes his approach. Instead of chasing her, he focuses on himself. He doesn't ignore her, he simply stops living for her approval. He invests in his ambitions, builds his confidence, reconnects with his friends, and starts prioritizing his own happiness. Suddenly, the dynamic reverses. The woman who once took him for granted now feels something she hasn't felt in a long time: uncertainty. She starts wondering why his attention isn't constant, why his texts are shorter, why he's harder to reach. That subtle distance creates curiosity, and curiosity creates value. See, this isn't about playing games. It's about understanding human psychology. People respect what they must earn, and the moment you stop being an open book, you force her to read between the lines. When she realizes you have a life beyond her, when she feels your absence, it awakens emotions she didn't know she had. But here's where men go wrong. They confuse loyalty with submission. True loyalty isn't about making yourself small. It's about standing tall and still choosing to give from a place of strength. Loyalty without boundaries isn't love. It's dependency. And dependency never earns respect. So what truly hurts a woman who doesn't value you? It's not the arguments or the cold shoulder. It's watching you evolve into someone who no longer needs her validation. When you stop chasing and start creating, when you stop explaining and start excelling, she feels the weight of what she lost, because you've turned what was once emotional dependence into quiet dominance. Silence and distance combined are your greatest teachers. Silence forces reflection, distance demands growth. When you step back and focus inward, you become a man who doesn't just survive rejection, he thrives because of it. You start to see that losing her wasn't a setback, it was a setup for your evolution. Too many men waste years waiting for a woman to realize their worth. They stay stuck in dead-end relationships, hoping one day she'll change, hoping she'll finally appreciate them. But that day never comes. And even if it did, you'd still be the man who waited instead of walking away. The truth is harsh, but freeing. She's not supposed to see your worth. You are. The real revenge isn't making her jealous or proving her wrong. The real revenge is becoming unrecognizable to the version of yourself who once begged for her attention. It's building yourself so powerfully that her opinion no longer matters. Outgrowing her is the final chapter, the silent victory that speaks for itself. Because when she sees you moving forward without bitterness, when she realizes her absence didn't break you, it hits her in a way words never could. Outgrowing her doesn't mean forgetting her. It means seeing her for who she is and choosing to evolve anyway. It means redirecting every ounce of energy you wasted chasing love into chasing purpose. When you pour that energy into your goals, your body, your mind, and your mission, you transform. You become the man who doesn't need validation because his life already validates itself. That's what truly changes the game. Because the man who values himself first never has to worry about being undervalued ever again, because the world responds to how you treat yourself. So treat yourself like someone worthy of respect, time, and peace. The right people will follow that energy. The wrong ones will fall away. And both outcomes are wins. So remember this. When she doesn't value you, the most powerful move isn't confrontation, it's transformation. Let your success, your silence, and your self-respect say everything you no longer need to explain, because that's the moment she feels it. Not your anger, not your pain, but your absence. And that absence will echo louder than any words ever could.